listening to the IELTS podcast. Learn from tutors and ex-examiners who are masters of IELTS preparation. Your host, Ben Worthington.
Hello there, IELTS podcast listeners. In this episode, we're going to listen to Maria. Maria is a student who took the online course, and she's going to share with us her experience and the end result. But at the end of the course, she'll tell us what happened with her IELTS scores. So, welcome to the podcast, Maria. How are you today?
Hi, I'm very good. Thanks, Ben. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. Great. It's a bit chilly and my nose is blocked. And as I mentioned before in the message, I think I look like death. But apart from that, it's going all right. So, could you tell us about yourself, like where you're from, where you live, and what you do?
So I am originally, I'm a Russian speaker, but I'm from Estonia.
Right.
And now I live in Australia, and I do a PhD in geoscience in one of the universities.
Wow.
So I can complain about heat because it's very hot now. I think it's 30 degrees outside.
Wow.
Yeah, and then the reason why I had to take IELTS, it's basically related to my stay in Australia and future job search. So I had to get sevens in every part of the IELTS. So this is how I ended up listening to IELTS podcasts.
Gotcha. Okay. And you said that you, what was it, geoscience? Is that what you're doing your PhD in? That's what you study?
Yes, exactly. I'm a geologist by education.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. I mean, it's a long story, I guess.
Okay. And you'll finish your PhD, and then in order to stay in the country and work in the country, you had to take IELTS. Is that right?
Yes, it's basically regardless of what kind of visa I apply for, I need to have a fresh IELTS test.
I see.
Before coming, yeah. Sorry.
No.
Should
Go
I
for
continue?
it. Yeah. Please.
Before coming to Australia, I had to take IELTS test, but then I took Cambridge English, and I only had to receive 6.5s, and then
Right.
I passed it like several years ago. So now it's irrelevant, and it's not enough of scores to apply for a visa.
Gotcha. Okay, I was going to ask, like, if you're doing a PhD there, you must have taken the IELTS exam before, but you said you did the Cambridge exam instead of the IELTS, is that right?
Yes, it was a long time ago, and it was like a weird decision. It's not really justified why I took one exam instead of the other. I just picked up the one that like popped up online first when I googled about the exams. Yeah, but I feel like I know enough about both of them. But for this time I really wanted to do IELTS because I feel like it's more recognized for Australian visas.
Absolutely. Yeah. I must admit, like in Europe, when I started teaching in Spain. I came over from England, and then within about a year or two I was teaching English, and everybody in Spain was obsessed with the Cambridge First, Cambridge Proficiency, and all of this, and Cambridge was really popular. But then in the last, I don't know, like 7 or 8 years, IELTS just really overtook the Cambridge exam, and it really is becoming the global certificate.
Yep.
Yeah. So you, how did you prepare for this IELTS exam?
So it's been a long journey. Because I'm a PhD student, and I write lots of text every day. Then I practiced. I've really written a couple of essays. I've taken a couple of practice tests, and I went straight to exam. And of course, I failed. I failed terribly. My first IELTS scores were writing 5.5. That hurt. It hurt so much. And then I think I had 7 in speaking, 7.5 reading, 7.5 listening. And then it took me 6 months before I had like a courage to take a new test. And I like worked on my writing for 6 months, and then I had another attempt, which was successful.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, well, those 6 months, I'm really impressed, and I want to just suggest something to the listeners, that 6 months is a very smart and patient amount of time to work on your IELTS scores. I hear too many times about students like, I got 6.5, so I'm going to put in for the exam immediately after. And this is what I've called in the past the IELTS casino. You know, you just keep on gambling and gambling and gambling your money, hoping that you're going to get a 7, that you might just get a 7. Whereas your approach was infinitely more intelligent, infinitely more smarter, and you just like put in the work, a good solid 6 months of preparation, and then you didn't have to play the IELTS casino. You went in there and supremely prepared and much more confident as well. And obviously you didn't get all of these like hits and multiple hits to your confidence. You know, you got that one hit where you got the 5. Yeah, it was like a real body blow getting that 5.5, wasn't it? From what you said, it really hurt your confidence, no?
It did. I think after I failed the writing part, I spent about maybe almost 2 months just recollecting myself and so I didn't really do much for the first 2 months. And then I started all the time throughout my preparation, I listened to the podcasts from you guys. They were like super helpful. I took notes. I remember writing down the phrases and like sentence structures and remember like implementing those.
Super.
I also had like a teacher over Skype, and we were just basically we had a lesson once a week, and he would go through my essays, but he was able to only finish half of the essays. So I ended up writing like 2 essays a month, which is so inefficient and very slow. And then at some point I felt like I need a boost of writing. I need to write like at least 3 essays a week.
Gotcha.
And this is like why I decided to like take the essay corrections. And
right.
And like almost immediately, I spotted my weaknesses in the essays and in task 1 graphic descriptions. Yeah. So then I guess, that's pretty much the story.
Okay. I was just going
there are more details.
It's all right. That's fine. It's fine. I just didn't want to interrupt you because I wanted to get all the story, all the information. But when you were doing, you said, was it 2 essays a month, something like that?
Yes.
Yeah? How come you were doing so little? Was it time? Was it enthusiasm? Or
I think it was time, because I'm basically like I have like a full-time employment, which is like research, and it really it's like it's a hard work. It requires lots of thinking and lots of writing, and it was very hard to come home in the evening and sit down and do this IELTS writing, which is like exactly the same type of like mental activity. So I think time, like motivation, was the main issue for me, and that's why I ended up being like so inefficient and not writing like enough essays a week.
Right. Yeah. This reminds me, just the other day I recorded a podcast about procrastination. And one of the tips I gave, if you are suffering from procrastination or a lack of motivation or finding time or energy to write your essays, one thing I suggested was, as soon as you wake up in the morning, when your brain is fresh, you write out an essay. And even if that takes a lot of time and energy, you could just copy one out, a perfect essay found online, written by a native English speaker, copy it out word for word. And it's better than nothing. But if you leave it until the end of the day, your brain is shattered. You know, you've got so many other stuff to do at the end of the day. But yeah, that's why I recommended at the beginning of the day. So anyway, you eventually, did you ditch this writing tutor that you were doing 1 hour a week with, or did you stick with him?
No, I actually, at some point I thought that, maybe I need to change a teacher. Maybe I just, what do I do? But then I sticked with him till like the last couple of days before the test. We did once a week catch up. It was still very useful, you know. I feel like it kept me in a good writing shape for IELTS, even though that it was not happening like very often. I still I didn't lose my writing shape. I had a break between my first exam that I failed and my preparation for the second round, and in this month I realized that I actually lost some of my IELTS essay writing skills.
Of course, of course.
It's really, if what I would suggest to a person who doesn't have much time, just like take it slower, but just be consistent and keep yourself in a good writing shape. And then before exam, do a marathon of like 2 weeks writing. Just 2 weeks writing of essays, and then it's going to be like polished before the exam.
Absolutely, that's fantastic advice. Absolutely. And just hammer it intensively, like you said, 2 to 3 weeks before the exam, just to build up those the writing muscle, and just keep producing those essays while all the information is fresh in your mind. So
I really like how you called it muscle. This is how I think about it.
Yeah, totally. And I think the same with like any language. It's not a skill. It is a skill, and it's very similar to like sports. You know, you cannot, I've said this a million times, but you cannot learn to ride a bike by reading a book. You have to jump on the bike.
Yeah.
And it's the same with a language, especially if you're speaking or writing. You cannot learn about writing alone just by reading material about how to construct your essay, about topic-specific vocabulary. At the end of the day, you need to put pen to paper and start writing. And this is why, it's, in my mind, it's insanely close to a sport. And just like a sport, unless you're actually doing it, like you can't learn to play squash by reading a book about it. You need to get into you need to get into the court, you know, and play and be active. Okay, so I'm just a bit confused here. You did the first test, and you got 5.5, and then you took another test, and then after the second test, did you get the results you wanted, or did you take another test after?
Sorry, I didn't mention that. So when I took in my second IELTS round, I got 7 in writing, 8 reading, 9 listening, and 8 speaking.
Wow, so you got a big improvement in pretty much everything, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was very much surprised by 9 in listening. Although I think it's like the strongest skill out of all 4, I really didn't expect it to be higher than 8. So it was surprising.
Well done there, Maria. That's excellent.
Yeah, what I found was really helpful is just listening to English speaking podcasts in general, and also reading some good media which uses advanced English, like The Economist or The Guardian. I think they have like very nicely written articles, and they are almost like text that you can see in the IELTS reading part.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with you there. And yeah, I got hold of the Economist writing style manual, and it really is very similar to academic texts, the style that they write. And also with The Guardian and with The Economist, you're going to get updated on world events as well. So yeah, that's an excellent tip there. Excellent. So this is how you got your 9 in listening, through reading a lot of these sort of like academic standard or level or style texts and listening to English podcasts. Which podcast did you listen to?
Well, apart from the IELTS podcasts, I listen to BBC documentaries.
Good.
Which is like a person somewhere in Japan goes to a prison which is full of elderly people, and he's like taking interviews and just explains the situation. So it's like really full of action podcast with all the sounds. Like it's incredibly interesting. It's not just not just English. And another good one is called 99% Invisible. It's kind of also similar to the documentaries one. About any possible topic you can like imagine. For example, the one I really liked was about Levi's jeans and how jeans were created and how they were like produced and how they became fashionable. So I think it really expands vocabulary, and I was getting used to hearing like sometimes my vocabulary is not very good, like it's not perfect, so I sometimes hear new words and it just like really they stick to my mind much better than
That's fantastic. And you just reminded me of what AJ Hodge from Effortless English told me, like way back in one of the first episodes. He's like, you could listen to IELTS listening tests, but they're not going to be so interesting. It's better to find a topic that you like, and you're going to listen so intensely that you're going to even forget that it's in English.
Exactly.
And when you said as well that you're listening to the one about the jails in Japan, and you get all the sounds, it sounds really immersive, but also you're going to be getting all this new vocabulary about a fairly common IELTS topic, which is like crime and society. And I imagine, I think from what you were saying, you're quite an active listener as well, so I could imagine you taking notes and writing down this new vocabulary.
Yes, I'm a bit chaotic with that, but I did I did try to do so.
No, but this is a really good way. And as you said at the beginning, when you said you were listening to my podcast and taking notes and using sentence structures, I would strongly recommend students to do this, because it transforms the act of listening into active listening and into like an active tutorial. And if you've got more functions and senses engaged in the activity, obviously you're going to recall more of that activity. All right, that's super. So you asked, so the second test you got, it sounds like you got all the grades that you wanted. Is that correct?
Yes, I totally passed.
Fantastic.
I only needed 7 in each of the part, but now I have like 8 in 3 of them and 7 in writing. So I get like, I'm not gonna take IELTS test anymore. I really hope I won't have to, but my writing journey is not over. I'm still it's like my weakest skill, and it lags behind my listening or my reading skill, so it's not over really.
Okay, and you were writing essays with Ellen as well, weren't you? And she was giving you feedback as well.
Yes, she was.
Super. What was the what kind of benefit did you get from doing the course and getting the feedback on your work?
So I think there are like two main things that Ellen, like, she spotted them, and then I realized so that these are the things that that keep me below 7 and maybe even below 6.5 in IELTS. So one of them is paragraphing structure and how I write my paragraph.
Right.
I used to write, so I used to like go around the topic, and from somewhere behind I would come to the point at the end of the paragraph. But based on Ellen's feedback, I started writing a thesis as the first sentence of the paragraph. Then I would give some arguments and prove these theses in 2 or 3 sentences. And the final sentence would be like a summary that says like, and this is why this problem exists, because we have such and such issues, and that makes it very nice and coherent. And then I would do exactly the same for the second paragraph. And I think this was like the crucial change in terms of essay task 2. As for task 1, what I learned the most from Ellen is logic of organizing your answer is the most important thing in task 1. It's like you look at the chart, and you need to find out what's the biggest trend. And then you need to find out what are the smallest change if it's a like trend line, or what's the smallest value if it's a bar chart. And then that would be my first paragraph. And in the second paragraph, I would go and compare and contrast things and make sure I actually like show some like differences and contrasts, because I think this is what they're looking for.
Totally.
One cool tip that she gave me is, as a reader, she wants to be able to draw the same chart without seeing the figure.
Absolutely, yeah.
And this is what I think, like, it made it like crystal clear how should I write about it.
Absolutely, yeah. That's a fantastic tip. And I remember when I was doing the corrections as well, that I would give a similar piece of advice that I'll just restate it just for the listeners. Like, when you're writing this, you want the reader, or the examiner in this case, to be able to recreate the graphic from your text, or at the very minimum get a very good overview, because as I've mentioned before, it's not a wise idea to mention every data point, but you want them to get a rough idea and be able to reformulate, recreate it from your text. So I think that's a good like test, if you're practicing with a writing partner, if they can recreate the graph from your text. So that's super. And then what would you say to, actually let's dive into your test day, if that's okay.
Test, good one.
So you were doing your test in Australia, yeah? In which city were you?
I was in Adelaide. This is the city where I live. And it was actually Australia Day, when they celebrate diversity and they give out like citizenship. So it was a very symbolic day to do a test.
Maybe the examiners were all in a good mood, but I should add this to my tips, take your test on a national holiday when everybody's happy. No. But anyway, sorry, I got distracted. So what happened on your test day, please?
Well, I think one of the important things is my test was in the afternoon, and that was on purpose, because once I saw that I have a chance to take a test at 1 p.m. instead of 9 a.m., I felt like that means that I can sleep as long as I need. Then I had there was a problem, because my speaking part was before the rest of the test, and it really made me really nervous, because normally you do reading, speaking, listening, and then you go and have this final kind of la but then speaking was first, and I remember sitting in the room and the examiner was about to call me, and my heart was beating so much, and I felt like it's like almost uncontrollable, and I felt like I have no air to breathe.
Oh,
And
whoa.
I just like started breathing with like lower belly, like taking deep breath. It calmed me down a bit, but it was still very nervous throughout the speaking test, and I honestly thought I did very bad.
Wow. Okay, so that's quite an intense experience, isn't it?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, and
sorry,
sorry?
Your breathing exercises, like breathing from deep below, did that have any effect? Did that calm you?
Yeah. This diaphragmatic breathing. It's This is what people do in yoga and meditation. They breathe with lower kind of belly, not with the upper chest, because when you breathe with upper chest, you take short breath. It's like short and fast. But with this diaphragmatic breathing, you are like, it's like it has something to do with psychology. I mean, it's proven and it works.
Fantastic.
So people do it in yoga. I think breathing exercises are definitely worth doing if you have like heart jumping outside of your chest.
That is super. You've given me an idea for a future episode. So thank you for that, Maria. Okay, and then so you managed to calm yourself down and get into like a better state of mind for before the speaking started. Is that right?
Yes, I was. Yeah. It helped, and exactly the same like sort of heart adrenaline rush was just before listening, when you put the earphones on and the screen is already on and it's like it's about to start. Then again, like I had this exactly the same feeling, but it was just, as soon as I hear the test, I switched off completely, and I was so immersed, so focused. So I think, this is why it was 9 out of 9.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well done. That's super. And then, so you had the listening, and did you do the breathing exercise before the listening as well? Is that right?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes. Yeah. To calm the heartbeat. Yeah, I did.
Super. That must have just brought you right into the zone, and you just. And then and you went on and you absolutely nailed it and got a 9. So well done there, Maria. You should be very proud of those results. And then in the speaking, sorry to just go back to the speaking, but what kind of questions were you getting and how did you respond?
Yeah, that was funny. So the first question was so funny. She asked me, do you like to look up to the sky? Like, do you like looking into the sky or something like that? And I was like, what?
Yeah, it's my hobby. I do it 10 hours a day.
Yeah. and then I talked about how I wish I had this time, and then it's, we should pay attention to such details in our lives. And the other question she asked me is about little lies, like if little lies are good or bad. And I think the examiner actually went along with my discussion. I don't think she continued to ask me questions she had in front of her. I think she kind of commented on my answers, and because I think it was either part 1 or part 2. She really didn't look at the questions. She just engaged, and it was very different experience from my first IELTS test, when I had a lady who just drilled me with very similar questions, and I felt like I already answered these questions. You are repeating them.
Interesting. Very interesting. And so this one, she just kind of dumped the script that she had in front of her. She stopped looking at it and just engaged with you, and you had a pleasant conversation. Is that right? Yeah.
Yes, it felt like that. And I really calmed down a bit because I saw that she's kind of enjoying. Yeah, and then there was this question for a monologue, or like this 2-minute question, and it was about talk about a situation when somebody didn't tell you complete truth.
Right.
And for that, it's another good tip I'd like to share.
Yeah.
Before going to exam, like 2 days before, I opened like IELTS speaking questions, just like list
Yeah.
from, I don't know, December, from like different people. Probably everyone just, they collect the data and share it.
Yeah.
And then I just had this like 2 A4 full of questions, and I started writing like approximate answers, like what would I say if I have this question, and I would just write ideas. And
Super.
when she asked me this question about incomplete truth, I immediately had the answer, because I remember like seeing this question already. So
Genius.
it really helped me. And also another thing, I've done exactly the same for IELTS essay topics.
Genius. Excellent.
Because sorry, I keep talking.
No, it's perfect. It's perfect, Maria.
For IELTS writing, one of the challenging part was coming up with arguments, because essay questions, I feel they're hard. For example, the international marketing or business questions, they completely make me blank. I just really don't know what to write. It's not my topic of interest, not even interest, like I don't really know anything about it.
Yeah.
So that's why certain questions that are harder to answer need to be addressed before the exam.
Yeah.
Like topics, yeah.
Gotcha. And so you did exactly the same for those. You just got like a list of questions and just brainstormed possible ideas.
Arguments, yeah.
And arguments, just to get your brain ready for a difficult topic on your writing paper.
Yes, and actually my essay question was whether CEOs and directors of big companies should be paid as much as ordinary workers. And I remember when I was preparing, I had a question about whether entrepreneurs and like business people should be paid as much as teachers and doctors. So it's really very similar question.
Yeah.
So I think I felt like I've written an essay in half an hour, and I had like 10 minutes at the end to check my post tasks, and I found lots of errors, and I think that's really helped me with the score, like all the articles. And
that's genius. That's genius, because when you see that question, you don't have to waste time thinking of ideas. You can draw on your idea bank that you've produced already, and it leaves a lot more time to actually focus on the writing, which is what the actual test should be testing anyway, in my opinion, like your writing ability. So that's genius. It's a really good tip there. So well done there, Maria. Sounds like you really came back with a vengeance. You got that first IELTS exam, and then you're just like, right, I am gonna come back, and I am really gonna just absolutely destroy it and come back with an amazing result. So that's fantastic.
I wish it was my attitude, because it wasn't. I was so upset, but I feel like it's a battle, and you really need to like have the attitude to pass and to prepare, because it's not an easy battle at all.
That's so true. That's so true. But I must admit, you very, very resilient and determined, and also patient not to just dive into another exam. You decided to take your time and be patient and prepare properly, and also importantly you invested in yourself, and you got some feedback from Ellen, essay correction, and I think in getting the improved, and that pushed your improvement level, as well as also, as you said, immersing yourself with all the documentaries and the listenings and stuff like that. So just before we finish, Maria, do you have anything else to add, or any tips for students?
Well, I think it takes time, Good writing and good English skills, they just take time to develop. And if there is a huge gap between expectations and the skills, then you need to take time to bridge this gap. Yeah, and maybe another tip for writing, I really spent almost 3-4 minutes before writing an essay. I spend on figuring out my arguments and logic of my paragraphs. And only then I started writing introduction. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think I mentioned something similar before on the podcast, but it's also in the course. I think in the online course I mentioned, do not even think about writing your introduction or anything until you have clearly mapped out your ideas and your plan, and then it's a case of transferring these ideas into your essay. So good tip there, good tip. Okay, I think that's everything, and thank you very much, Maria. It's been really nice talking with you, and I wish you all the best for the rest of your study and your stay in Australia.
All right, thank you so much for your work. Looking forward to hearing more success stories. I'm sure they will come.
I hope so as well. I hope so.
May I just ask you where your accent is from? I've been so curious.
Okay. Yeah, I get this a lot, really. The thing is, Maria, I haven't lived in the UK for about 15 years, okay? But when I did, I lived in Huddersfield, and this is where I grew up, in Yorkshire, right?
Okay, right.
It's near Manchester. However, when I left Yorkshire for the first time, I went to Australia when I was 18. Nobody understood me, not even Australians, so I had to I had to really modify the way I spoke. And then teaching English, I had to modify it again to make it clearer, to slow down. And even English people have difficulty believing that I'm from England. And it's really sometimes humiliating, I think I mentioned this before, but I remember once I was on the metro, I was on the underground, and I helped this lady with her ticket, and she said, "Oh, thank you. You speak really good English. Where are you from?" And I was like, I'm from England. And she was like, oh, really? But just one last thing. When I go back to England and I'm having dinner with my family, and I'm living at my mum's for a good week or two, then it slowly starts to come back, And I slowly start returning to the original Yorkshire lad that left a good 20 years ago. More or less.
Thanks for listening to IELTSPodcast.com.